Chow. I put Ghanaian kente lines inside the adire shapes. See?
I like that your mind does not rest.
How is school?
Fine, sir. I came second in my class.
Second. Work harder.
Second in my class.
Nobody knows me here, Mama. I am just a person walking. My daughter. There will be African food, Mama. There is always African food.
The gate swung open at exactly 8:47 p.m. 12 black SUVs rolled in. Not one of them rushed. Not one driver opened a door. The security guard at the north entrance pressed his radio so hard against his ear that his hand shook. Inside the venue, 500 people were mid-celebration, crystal chandeliers blazing, a live Fuji band working through a set that had been going strong for 3 hours. Gold and ivory tables loaded with food nobody was eating because they were too busy performing for each other. Nobody inside that hall knew what had just parked outside. Nobody inside that hall knew what was already walking through their doors. But to understand what happened at that gate, you have to understand the woman sitting alone at table 17. Her name was Amara Ose, 32 years old. She had the kind of stillness that made rooms pay attention without knowing why. Deep brown skin, high cheekbones, a face that gave nothing away unless you knew how to read it, and most people never learned. She was sitting near the back of the hall beside a concrete pillar, holding a bottle of malt she had not touched in 23 minutes. She wore a simple terracotta dress, flat shoes, a worn leather bag she had carried through 4 countries. Around her, 500 people were celebrating her cousin Bimp's wedding to the son of Chief Coker, one of the most connected men in Lagos. Gold tablecloths, champagne, asoebi fabric that cost 40,000 naira per yard. And every single person who walked past table 17 gave her the same look. Pity. She had grown up with that look. She knew the exact shape of it, the tilt of the head, the smile arriving half a second too late, the eyes completing their arithmetic before the mouth could catch up. She had grown up as the quiet cousin, the one without the rich father. The one in the school in Surulere while the Adeyemi cousins attended private schools on the island where teachers were called Mr. instead of Oga. Her mother, Mama Ngozi, sold pepper soup from a zinc-roofed kitchen. Her father, Papa Ose, fixed broken electronics with patient hands and said almost nothing. And Aunt Chidinma, her mother's eldest sister, a woman who entered rooms the way announcements entered rooms, held family gatherings that were really competitions, with Bimp always at the center of the trophy display. Amara had always sat in the margin. She had also always been watching. At 24, she left on a full scholarship to the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology in Daejeon. Fashion technology and textile design. When she told the Adeyemi family, Uncle Femi, the patriarch, the man whose authority expanded with his voice, had leaned back in his chair and said, "Korea, let us see what she brings back." He said it pleasantly, like a man giving a child permission to try something he already expected to fail. That sentence, "let us see," traveled with her all the way to the departure gate. It sat in her chest on the flight. It was still sitting there now at table 17, 7 years later. What she had built in those 7 years, none of them knew the dimensions of. She had built a textile collection that a Korean design journal called startlingly original. She had built a found family, Solange the Cameroonian, Kofi the Ghanaian PhD student, a whole community that materialized every Sunday around the smell of her egusi soup. She had built a life so fully realized that the life she had left behind felt, from Seoul, like a draft that had been replaced by the finished version. And she had built something else. Something that had arrived unexpectedly, the way the most important things always do. She had been helping at Mama Bola's West African food stall near the university gate one Saturday when she noticed the man in the corner. Lean. Korean. 30s. Sitting completely alone at the corner table with a cup of barley tea and the specific quality of stillness that separated people who were waiting from people who were simply, completely present. He was not waiting for anything. He was already there in a way that most people never managed. He looked up at Mama Bola. "Who made the jollof rice?" he asked. "The smoky bottom specifically." Mama Bola pointed her wooden spoon at Amara without turning from the pot. She did. Amara cooks the jollof. Jinho eats the jollof. Now you know each other. He stood briefly. Jinho Kwan. Amara Ose. Nigerian. Ghanaian father, Nigerian mother. Lagos. He nodded, the specific nod of someone confirming a hypothesis they had been running quietly. The smoky layer at the bottom, he said. How do you achieve it? She looked at him. In her experience, Korean men did not, as a rule, ask about the smoky bottom of jollof rice within the first 30 seconds of an introduction. You reduce the heat at exactly the right moment, she said. And then you resist the urge to stir. Restraint produces the best result. In jollof, yes. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Approaching it. Good afternoon, he said, and paid for his food, and left. She thought about those 9 minutes for 4 days afterward. The thinking irritated her. He came back every Saturday. He always sat at the corner table. He always ordered the same thing. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday when Amara was there helping, he picked up her sketchbook from the counter, carefully, asking first, and turned the pages with the same focused attention he gave to everything. These are textile designs, he said. Yes. This one is Korean. Pojagi influence. But the geometry is mine. I'm building a collection that exists between West African print tradition and Korean textile tradition. Not one borrowing from the other. Both speaking simultaneously. Is that possible? 2 languages at once. I do it every day, she said. I think in English and Igbo and Chui, and sometimes all 3 at the same time, and none of them cancels the others out. He considered this for longer than most people would consider anything. What brought you to Korea? The scholarship came here. But also, I needed somewhere that didn't already have a story about me. In Lagos, I am always someone's less successful cousin. Here I am just a person with a sketchbook. He looked at her steadily. I understand that. I grew up in a family where the story was already written before I was born. I spent years deciding whether to live inside that story or outside it. Which did you choose? A pause. Small but complete. Neither. I rewrote it. She decided, somewhere in that pause, that this man was either the most interesting person she had ever met or the most dangerous. She had not yet understood that in his particular case, these were exactly the same thing. Before we go any further, if this story is already pulling you in, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications. What this family does to Amara at this wedding, and what walks through that gate when she finally makes one phone call, you are not ready. Stay with us. 2 weeks after the food stall, she ran into him at a textile exhibition in Seoul. She was standing before an installation combining Korean pojagi patchwork with Kent cloth patterns, 2 entirely different geometric traditions woven into something neither could have built alone. She heard his footsteps in the gallery and knew who it was before she turned. What do you see? He asked. 2 languages, she said, borrowing words. Eventually building something new. That was a very good answer. You say that like you were testing me. Testing implies I already knew the right answer. I didn't. I was genuinely asking. They walked the rest of the exhibition together. They had dinner afterward at a small samgyeopsal restaurant where the pork belly hissed on the tabletop grill between them. Amara loaded her perilla leaves with meat and garlic and kimchi and ate the whole thing in one bite, completely without apology. Stop watching me eat, she said. I am not watching you eat. I am watching you enjoy eating. Those are different things. In Nigeria, eating well is not embarrassing. In Korea, he said, wrapping his own smaller, neater Sam, it is a form of respect to the cook. Good. Then we agree. He laughed. Briefly, genuinely a laugh that seemed to arrive before he could decide whether to allow it. And sitting across the grill smoke from him, watching his face do something it clearly did not do often, Amara understood that she was in very serious trouble indeed. The truth about Jinho Kwan arrived on a street in Itaewon, on a night that smelled of grilling meat and Burna Boy bleeding from a Nigerian restaurant 20 meters away. They had been walking after a gallery when 3 men cut across the pavement toward them. They were not strangers, not to Jinho. Amara felt the shift in him before she saw it, not tension exactly, but the specific gathering of a person who has been in this situation many times and knows precisely what each next second requires. He stepped slightly forward. He said 6 sentences in Korean, very quietly, without raising his hands, without changing his face. The three men looked at each other. They left. The street resumed around them. Amara had watched this with the complete stillness of someone who understood that she had just read a sentence she needed to think about carefully before she responded. She let 15 seconds pass. Then she said, "Tell me. Exactly what you do." Jinho looked at her. The Burna Boy track ended. A new one started, something slower, something that understood how important the next 60 seconds were. He said, "All of it. All of it." And he told her. Standing on a Itaewon sidewalk with the city moving around them and a Nigerian restaurant glowing warm and yellow at their backs, he told her everything. 3 generations. His grandfather had built it. His father had expanded it. He had inherited it at 24 when his father had a stroke, and there was nobody else, and the thing his grandfather had built did not pause for grief. He controlled the movement of certain goods through specific ports. He managed disputes between parties who could not go to the police. He did what the state could not or would not do, and he was paid accordingly. When he finished, the silence lasted a long time. "Are you a good man?" she asked. He gave this the full weight it deserved. He did not reach for comfort or deflection. "I have never hurt someone who did not choose to enter my world," he said. "I have never involved people who did not know what they were getting into. I am loyal, completely, unconditionally loyal, to the people who are loyal to me." A pause. "And I am not going to make myself sound better than I am so that you stay. That would be a dishonesty I am not capable of with you." "Why not with me specifically?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you would know. You would know immediately. And I would rather lose you with the truth than keep you with a version of myself that is not real." The longest pause of the entire evening. "Buy me tteokbokki," she said. He blinked. "Now. Right now. I think better when I am eating and I need to think." He bought her tteokbokki from a street cart, and they ate from paper cups on the pavement and talked about a pojagi artist she had read about and a restaurant Solange had found and whether gochujang red could be reproduced in natural textile dye. 2 weeks later, she came to him and said she was staying. 3 conditions. Her work was always hers. Any children would be kept clear of his world until they were adults and could choose for themselves, and he would be honest with her always, even when it cost him. He agreed to all 3 without hesitation or negotiation. She believed him because she had already learned that this man said exactly what he meant every time and nothing else. They married in Jeju Island 18 months later. Small ceremony, cliff edge, turquoise water, sky turning gold. 2 witnesses, Solange, who cried harder than the bride, and Mr. Park, Jinho's right hand. A lean Korean man in his mid-40s who stood with military straightness and looked as though he might be experiencing an emotion, but was not yet prepared to confirm this. The dinner table held both sujibi and ofanugbo side by side, Korean hand-torn noodle soup and Nigerian bitter leaf stew, which Amara would later describe as one of her finest achievements. She did not tell the Adeyemi family who Jinho was. "He is in international acquisitions," she said, when Mama Ngozi pressed. The Adeyemis were given nothing more specific than this. Partly it was strategy. Partly it was protection. And partly, she was always honest with herself. That was one of her firmest rules. It was a test. A long-running hypothesis. She had been collecting data for 30 years, and she was almost ready to publish the results. The results arrived in the form of a wedding invitation. Bimp Adeyemi was marrying Tun Coker, Chief Coker's son. The event was the Lagos social occasion of the year, the kind of wedding that made it into the society pages before it happened, because the planning alone was newsworthy. The asoebi fabric cost 40,000 naira per yard. The cake was being flown in from Abuja. The invitation that arrived for Amara was addressed to Amara Ose and husband, the and husband printed in the same elegant calligraphy as everything else, but carrying, somehow, a faintly skeptical energy, as though even the calligrapher had wondered whether the husband was real. Amara sat with the invitation on the kitchen table in their Seoul apartment for 7 days. She made coffee every morning and looked at it. On the 8th day, she called Jinho, who was in a meeting in a building in Gangnam that she knew the name of, but not everything that happened inside it. "I want to go," she said, when he picked up. "To the wedding?" "Yes." But I want to go the way I would have gone 7 years ago. Before any of this. I want to go with nothing. No jewelry. No bag. No car. Nothing that would change what they show me. A pause. The maybe, he said. She had told him about the maybe once, late at night in their apartment with the Han River below them and the city lights doing their patient thing in the dark. The 30 years of maybe they love me more than they show. Maybe they don't mean it the way it lands. Maybe if I try differently. Yes, she said. The maybe. I need to take it off the table once and for all. I will come, he said. Not with me. Separately. Stay nearby. How nearby? Close enough. A pause that she recognized as the pause of a man adjusting a plan he had already fully formed. I was going to bring 12 vehicles, he said. She closed her eyes. Jinho. It is a considered number. It is a statement. Yes, he agreed, without apology. Not until I call you. Nothing until I call. Promise me. I promise. She packed her own bag that afternoon. She left the emerald earrings he had given her on their first anniversary. Left the structured bag. Left the watch. Left everything that functioned as evidence of a life the Adeyemis had not anticipated for her. She packed the terracotta dress she wore for airport travel. Flat shoes. The old leather bag that had been to Daejeon and Seoul and Jeju and 3 exhibitions across Asia and smelled faintly of all of them. In the mirror before she left for the airport, she looked exactly like the girl who had left Lagos 7 years ago with a scholarship and a sketchbook and a family's worth of let us see sitting in her chest. She was ready. She arrived at the venue in an Uber because of course she did. The grand entrance of Bimp's wedding was everything it was supposed to be: glass and marble, elaborate floral arches, red carpet, uniformed ushers, Range Rovers and Mercedes stacked along the drop-off lane. Guests arriving in Asoebi outfits tailored to an inch of perfection, Gelly head ties constructed with the ambition of small buildings. The whole thing was gorgeous and deliberate and designed to make exactly the statement it was making. Amara stepped out of the Uber and walked in. The cousin at the registration desk ran his eyes over her dress before he found her name on the list. And the invitation says +1, he asked, in the careful tone of someone who had already decided the answer. My husband will be coming later, she said. The pause before his reply confirmed everything she had suspected about the energy behind the calligraphed and husband. Of course, Ma. Table 17. She already knew table 17 was near the back. If you are watching this and the anger is starting to rise, that is the right response. Like this video right now so more people find the story, because what is about to happen at this wedding is going to have your jaw on the floor. We are not done. She found table 17 without asking for help. It was beside a pillar at the edge of things, with a partial view of the family tables and a complete view of the rest of the hall. She sat down among confused Abuja guests who were also wondering what they had done to end up here, ordered a malt she had no intention of drinking, and began her final data collection. Aunt Chidinma arrived. Aunt Chidinma moved through rooms the way tropical weather moved. She did not enter spaces so much as become them. She swept in wearing a gelly that had been constructed with the ambition of a monument and an Asoebi wrapper that her tailor had clearly understood was a performance piece. She was magnificent and she knew it, and this knowing was so total it had become invisible to her, like water to a fish. She swept past table 17 on her way to somewhere more important and registered Amara with a glance that managed to be warm and irrelevant at the same time. Amara, you came. Have you eaten? Is your husband coming? Yes, Auntie. He will be here later. Aunt Chidinma nodded, the nod of someone receiving information of minimal consequence, touched Amara's arm once, and moved on. She had already found her next destination before she finished the gesture. 30 seconds later her voice floated back across the hall from a cluster of better-dressed women near the champagne table. Poor Amara, she was saying, loud enough and not caring that it was loud enough. She went all the way to Korea and well. She says the husband is in business. Every man is in business, is he not? Gentle laughter. Knowing laughter. The laughter of women who had already agreed on the conclusion before the conversation started. Amara drank her malt. Filed the data point. Said nothing. The family photo was called 20 minutes later, and this was where it got precise. The photographer assembled the Adeyemi family near the front of the hall, 15, 20 people in matching burnt orange, the women's gellies towering, the men's agbatas vast and authoritative, Bimp at the radiant center in white silk. Amara stood. She moved toward the group. One of Aunt Chidinma's daughters, a girl of about 26 who had been given a specific social assignment for the evening and was executing it, stepped into her path with a gentle smile that had been practiced. "We are doing immediate family first," she said. "Just the core for this one." "Of course," Amara said. She stepped back. She waited. The photos were taken. Multiple shots. Laughter. A child was rearranged. Uncle Femi wanted a slightly different angle. The photographer reviewed them on his screen and took more. The family dissolved back to their tables, still laughing, still buzzing with the specific electricity of people who had just been photographed together looking exactly like what they wanted to be. Nobody remembered to call everyone else back. Nobody called Amara back. She stood at the edge of the hall for a moment, not moving, not performing acceptance or hurt or anything at all. Then she walked back to table 17 and sat down. She picked up her malt. Uncle Femi's speech was the centerpiece of the evening, and he delivered it with the confidence of a man who had never once in his life looked at his own words from the outside. He had a genuinely good speaking voice, the pause, the pivot, the assembled phrase, and he had been using it for self-congratulation for so long that the skill and the content had become completely disconnected from each other. He spoke of Bimp's journey, her wisdom, her choices, her understanding of value. And then, with the specific cheerfulness of a man dropping a grenade he believes is a gift, we always said in this family, know your worth. Do not go chasing shadows in foreign places. Do not let what looks like opportunity take you somewhere that turns out to be nothing. Bimp understood this. Bimp chose correctly. The hall laughed. The hall applauded. The hall was warm and gathered and pleased with itself. Several pairs of eyes moved briefly toward table 17. Amara held her malt bottle and looked at a fixed point on the wall above the champagne display and breathed. The worst thing was not the speech. The worst thing was the aunt, the one Amara had always moderately liked, the one who had always meant better than she managed, who crossed the hall to table 17 with a white envelope held in both hands like an offering. She sat down beside Amara and leaned close and said, with a genuine compassion that was somehow the most devastating thing of the entire evening, "For transport, my dear. We know things have not been easy. We just want you to know we are thinking of you." Amara looked at the envelope. She looked at the aunt. "Thank you, Auntie," she said. She did not touch the envelope. The aunt sat with her for a moment, rubbing her arm, and then left. The envelope stayed on the table between Amara's malt bottle and an untouched bread roll, white and sealed, containing whatever amount someone had decided adequately expressed their pity. Deo found her 15 minutes later. He was the one good cousin, lean, kind, perpetually slightly anxious, wearing his asoebi like it had been placed on him by someone else. He sat down next to her without being invited because that was Deo, that was always Deo, the one who showed up at the right moment and did not know how to leave when the situation required it. "You should go," he said quietly. "Seriously, Amara. These people are not, they don't deserve." "I'm not going anywhere," she said. "They are humiliating you. Right now. In front of everyone. You don't have to sit here and—" "Deo." She turned and looked at him, and whatever he saw in her face stopped the sentence completely. "I am exactly where I need to be." He stared at her. He had known her for 32 years, and he had never seen that particular expression before. It was the expression of someone who was not enduring something. It was the expression of someone who was completing something. He sat down. He did not leave. That decision would matter before the night was over. In the corner of the hall, at a small table partially hidden behind a marble pillar and a floral arrangement the size of a small car, a man named Mr. Park was eating jollof rice. He had been eating it with careful, appreciative focus since before the ceremony began. He had complimented the caterer's chef through a waiter. He had ordered a second serving. He had done nothing else visibly. But his phone had been relaying information to a hotel suite across the city at 15-minute intervals since 4 p.m., and the man in that suite had been reading each update with the still, complete attention he gave to everything. Then Bimp came to table 17 and Mr. Park picked up his phone and typed one sentence. Bimp arrived with champagne and confidence and 3 friends arranged behind her like a backing track. She was genuinely beautiful in her white silk. This was real, not a performance. Bimp had always been genuinely beautiful, and she had had enough champagne to feel like warmth and cruelty were the same thing, which is the most dangerous state for a person with social power to be in. Amara, arms wide, embrace that lasted exactly long enough to be documented. I am so glad you made it all the way. The trip alone from Seoul, I cannot imagine. She turned slightly to include her friends, to let them have this moment with her. This is my cousin Amara. She lives in Korea. Then back to Amara, her voice dropping just enough to feel confiding while carrying perfectly to the 6 nearest tables. We tried to look up your husband, you know. When word came that you had married, we all looked, and we could not find a single thing. Not one thing online. Not one article, not one photo, not one mention anywhere. She laughed, bright, genuine. The laugh of someone enjoying themselves completely. A man of total mystery. What is it exactly that he does? Every table within earshot went quiet. Amara set her malt bottle on the table with the specific care of someone placing the final word at the end of a very long sentence. She looked at Bimp. Not coldly. Not with anger. With the complete, unhurried, measuring attention of someone who has been collecting data for 30 years and has just completed the final data point. Acquisitions. A delighted glance shared with the friends. Of what? The quietest possible pause. Everything, Amara said. Eventually. Subscribe right now. Turn on the bell. Because in approximately 4 minutes, 12 black SUVs are going to pull through that gate, and this hall is going to understand exactly what everything eventually means. Do not move. Do not close this video. What happens next is the entire reason this story exists. Bimp's smile held for a moment on a footing it could not find, and then she pivoted with practiced social grace. Well, do bring him by when he arrives. If he arrives, we would all love to meet. Enjoy your evening, Bimp, Amara said, already looking past her, already done. The dress is extraordinary. Truly. The dismissal was absolute. Bimp had walked to this table intending to leave it on her own terms. She did not. She walked away with her friends and a smile that she had to work for, and Amara watched her go with the expression of a woman closing a door she had been standing at for 3 decades. She stood, smoothed her dress, handed Deo her malt. Watch this, she said. Don't let anyone touch that envelope. She walked to the corridor. She took out her phone. She dialed. He answered before the first ring finished. I heard, Jinho said. Mr. Park. Yes. A pause. In the quiet of the corridor with the party muffled behind her, she heard the specific quality of his silence, the silence of a man who was already in motion, already decided, already simply waiting for her word. Are you ready? He asked. She thought about 32 years. She thought about the scholarship departure gate and let us see. She thought about the envelope on the table and the family photo she was not in and the specific compassion of the woman who had leaned close and said, we know things have not been easy, as though ease was something that had happened to other people and left Amara behind. She thought about a man who had told her everything true about himself on a Itaewon sidewalk and then bought her tteokbokki and talked about fabric dye. Yes, she said. Come. And Jinho. Yes. Don't be quiet about it. The security guard's radio crackled at 8:47 p.m. Ezekiel. North Gate. Open it now. Management authorization. Ezekiel opened the gate. The first SUV rolled through. Black. Unhurried. Then the second. Then the third. They came in formation, in silence, 12 identical vehicles moving with the specific precision of something that had decided exactly where it was going and felt no need to announce this with speed. They filled the forecourt and stopped simultaneously. The engines cut. The quiet that followed was not the absence of sound. It was the presence of something else entirely. Not one door opened. Inside the venue, a guest near the window looked out. Then another. A waiter stopped mid-service. The Fuji band found its rhythm failing. The drummer lost it first, then the brass, then the whole thing dissolved into a few trailing notes and stopped. 500 people turned toward the windows without knowing why, the way animals turn toward something before they understand what they are turning toward. Who is that? Aunt Chidinma said, gripping the arm of the woman beside her. Nobody answered because nobody knew. The venue doors opened. Mr. Park walked out to the lead vehicle. A brief exchange, inaudible from inside. The lead door opened. Jinho Kwon stepped out. He was wearing a charcoal gray champa, the traditional Korean formal coat reimagined in clean contemporary line over a white shirt. No tie. No jewelry except his wedding band. He buttoned his coat with 2 unhurried buttons. He looked at the venue entrance. He nodded once to Mr. Park. He walked in. Behind him, 6 men in dark suits emerged from the other vehicles and moved into the entrance with the quiet efficiency of people who had done this in many cities and required no instruction and attracted no attention until, suddenly, they attracted all of it. Jinho stood at the entrance to the hall and scanned the room. Once. Brief. Complete. The way you reread a page you have already read. He found what he was looking for. Table 17. Back of the hall. Beside a pillar. He began to walk. The crowd did not part dramatically. People simply moved small, unconscious adjustments, like water making room for something that had decided to pass through it. He crossed the full length of the hall without breaking stride, without looking at anyone who was looking at him, without acknowledging the weight of 500 pairs of eyes tracking his movement. He reached table 17. Amara looked up at him. She was the only person in the hall who was not confused. He stood before her. He looked at her, the simple dress, the flat shoes, the old leather bag she had carried through every important moment of the last 7 years. Something moved through his expression that had no precise name. It was not surprise. It was not pride. It was the older, more specific thing that a person feels when they see someone they love being exactly, completely themselves. He took her hand from the table. He lifted it to his lips. The hall did not breathe. You waited, he said, in Korean. I needed to see clearly, she answered, in Korean. Did you see everything you needed? She exhaled long, slow, complete. 32 years of wait in a single breath. Yes, I saw everything. He pulled out the chair beside her. He sat down. Not at the family table. Not at a better seat. Right here. Table 17, beside the pillar, in the place they had given her. Deo had not moved since she handed him the malt. He was holding it in both hands like a man who had been asked to hold something very fragile and was taking the assignment seriously. Amara, he said, very quietly. Who is this man? My husband, she said warmly. Jinho, this is my cousin Deo. The good one. Jinho looked at Deo with a slight, courteous inclination of his head. I've heard good things about you. Deo said nothing for a full 5 seconds. Then, there were men in suits standing at the edges of the room. Amara said. 6 of them. Amara. Deo. Breathe. Across the hall, Mr. Park moved. He had returned to his corner table, finished the last of his jollof rice with unhurried satisfaction, and was now crossing the hall toward Uncle Femi's table, the patriarch's table, dead center, gold cloth, best champagne. The seat of the man who had said, let us see what she brings back, and then apparently forgotten he had said it. Mr. Park placed a single manila folder on the table between the champagne flutes and the half-eaten appetizers. He touched it once. He walked away. Uncle Femi stared at the folder. He looked for the man who had put it there. The man was gone. He opened it. 1 page. Clean. Printed in clear, precise font. A corporate summary. The Korean Trade Consortium his company had been pursuing for 14 months, the deal that would triple his regional operations, the one that 3 separate brokers had told him was moving toward final approval, the one he had spoken about at dinner tables and family gatherings with the careful confidence of a man who did not want to jinx it but could not stop mentioning it. The summary showed the consortium's full parent company structure. And at the top of that structure, printed in the same clean font as everything else. Kwon Group. Uncle Femi looked up slowly. At table 17, across the full length of the hall, Jinho Kwon was eating jollof rice. He was not looking back. He had not looked in Uncle Femi's direction once. He was eating with the focused, appreciative attention of a man who understood what made the smoky bottom of a good jollof rice work and was respecting it. He did not need to look. Chief Coker, the father of the groom, a man who had spent 4 decades reading power in rooms where it had not announced itself, appeared at table 17 with the careful movement of someone who has just recalibrated an entire evening's understanding. Mr. Kwan, he said. I believe my office has been trying to arrange a conversation through several channels over the past months. Yes, Jinho said pleasantly. He looked up from his food. We received the requests. A pause in which Chief Coker understood that Jinho was not going to say anything further on this subject at this time and in this place. I hope you are comfortable. I hope the food is very good, Jinho said. He returned to his plate. Chief Coker stood for exactly 1 more second and then withdrew with the efficiency of a man who knows when a room has given him his answer. Comment below right now, did you see that coming? Chief Coker himself came to the table. And Jinho said the food is very good and went back to eating. That is a man who has never once in his life needed to prove a single thing to anyone. Tell us in the comments, what is your favorite moment so far? We will be reading every one. Aunt Chidinma came next. She came with a rebuilt face, not a fake face. Aunt Chidinma had never been a fake person. She had real warmth and she was deploying it now with a new understanding of what it was for. She reached the table and touched Amara's arm and said, Amara, my darling. Why did you not say anything? We would have arranged everything so differently. We would have. Done what, Auntie? Amara said. Her voice was light. No anger in it. Something more final than anger. We would have welcomed you properly. We would have given you a better seat. We would have. I was welcomed where I Saturday. Amara gestured at table 17 without irony. I had a very good view from here, Auntie. I saw everything I needed to see. Aunt Chidinma opened her mouth. She looked at Jinho, who had not raised his eyes from his plate once during this exchange. The not looking was its own language. The not looking said, I have the complete picture of this evening, and I have made my assessments, and I do not need to perform any of them for you here. We are so glad you could join us, Aunt Chidinma said to him at last, at the pitch of someone attempting a final recovery. Jinho set down his fork. He looked up at her. His narrow dark eyes were perfectly courteous, completely without warmth. Thank you, he said, for the hospitality this evening. Thank you for the hospitality. On behalf of an evening that had seated his wife at the back of the hall beside a pillar, that had handed her an envelope of transport money, that had closed the family photo without her in it, that had delivered a speech designed to measure her publicly against the bride and find her insufficient. Thank you for the hospitality this evening. Aunt Chidinma left. She left with her dignity intact because it was the only thing she was taking with her and she knew it.